Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining me today. I will be guiding you through a 60-minute Yin Yoga practice that will be focused primarily on the hips. I have been working a lot with the dynamism between Yin and Yang and really starting to value a lot of the key components and some of the skills that can be developed within the practice of Yin Yoga. One of which is this opportunity to practice the power of pause. So just within the parameter of how we approach our practice in Yin Yoga, we have the opportunity to really start simply and to observe its efficacy as we start to move through our practice. We start by feeling into the sensation of the posture and observing in this pause the response that occurs within our body and our mind and within our hearts. And then we start to layer on this gentle attentiveness to the cultivation of Yin qualities. And those include kindness and this relaxed presence, as well as an open tolerance and a receptivity. And we apply this to each posture, as well as to whatever starts to arise within our practice. So keeping that in mind, when we start to work into the hips, there's a lot of connective tissue there, and there's many of those that teach yoga, that teach traditional Chinese medicine, that mention when we start to work into the hips that it can stir up a lot of stuff, whether it's stronger emotions or memories of things. So just keep that in mind as we start to move through our practice. And that's when we can start to take a moment to pause, to notice what's coming up, and just remind ourselves, this is, say, anger that's starting to arise, and this is what it feels like within my body. And you can either sit with it for a bit or ease out of the pose completely and settle back in. And just as it is natural that some days we may find ourselves pushing, striving, or getting lost on a trail of what we might deem a negative thought, we can practice being gentle with ourselves, especially when we are aware of these different mind states. So I love this quote by Viktor Frankl: "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is a power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." So as we move through our practice, I invite you to apply this power of pause as we move through our practice. All right, so we'll take a moment to sit with these words and just a brief meditation, aware of the pause, the response, and each arising moment. Please have a blanket and perhaps a couple of blocks or thicker books or canned goods. Find a comfortable position for your body, seated or lying down. You might begin to close the eyes or just soften the gaze. And just settle into a rhythm of breath that brings ease. And let the attention rest upon that ease. And this might be a sound within your space, a sensation within the body, or it might be a particular phrase or a mantra that still starts to invoke this sense of ease and settling into your practice. With each arising moment, notice that pause of awareness and observe how you start to respond. Let's sit in quietude and begin to cultivate this intention. I'll guide you out when the time has come. Take a moment to rest your attention at the heart space. If there are other intentions that you would like to set for your practice, you can do so now. Begin to blink the eyes a few times. Take in your practice space. Let's make our way to hands and knees. You may wish to have something that's underneath the knees as we move through these first few postures. Especially if you find that your knees come off of your mat and onto the floor that's surrounding that space. So the first posture that we'll come into is a tadpole. It looks very much like a wide-kneed child's pose, but I want you to start to experiment with perhaps being more upright to start. So in our Yin Yoga practice, we have these intended target areas that we're aiming to practice. And each posture is going to have multiple target areas. You might feel sensation in all of those places, or only in a few or one. And as long as you're feeling it in one of those places, just know that you are in the right place. So you might have an angle of the shins in towards one another or slightly away. And as you start to sink your hips towards your heels, notice sensation where it's felt within the inner groin, and just find a suitable amount of sensation that doesn't feel too intense or perhaps even oppressive here. And you might stay more upright or start to walk the hands out, lowering the torso towards the floor. You might even have a gap between the heels and the hips, just keeping in mind finding that just right edge as you settle into stillness for a period of time. And we'll be here for anywhere from 3 to 4 minutes. And typically in our Yin Yoga practice, we tend to hold poses from 3 to about 5 minutes. Once you find that suitable edge of resistance, this tug perhaps within the inner groin, sensation within the outer hips, or even within the spine or the shoulders, pause and begin to relax the muscles within those spaces. Just start to let the weight of the body and gravity bring you closer, to have you simmer here. And it's kind of these magic ingredients of finding stillness, relaxing the muscles, that allows us to access those denser yin tissues of the body. So this includes our fascia, our ligaments, our tendons. And you can let the breath flow however it feels best here, whether it's deeper, slower, or just as natural rhythm and pace. But if you find that the breath becomes particularly choppy, or you start to feel that it's a bit labored, use that as a sign that you may be too deep within the pose. And we never want to feel any sharp sensation, numbness, or tingling. This would require backing out of the pose, just a shift or realignment, or staying out of the posture completely. The more that we practice Yin Yoga, the longer that we're able to hold the poses, because our tissues have been conditioned and strengthened to do so. So if you start to feel that after trying to find different edges and just not finding a spot that feels suitable to hold within, know that I encourage you to release from a posture and just wait until I cue the next one. That would show that you're a wise practitioner and truly listening to the body. We'll be here for about 30 more seconds. We'll slowly start to make our way out of this pose. Do so very gradually. Take your time to begin to make your way back up to hands and knees. And once you do so, begin to just come into a simple child's pose. With legs closer together, more rounding within the spine, either resting the forehead onto the floor or just stacking the palms and resting it here. Just starting to feel sensation begin to diminish from those areas that we've just stressed. Back up to hands and knees, we'll start to shift now into frog. So starting from a more vertical thigh or so, begin to move the knees away from one another. So foot variation can be either pointed to the long edges of the mat, back behind you, or there could even be an angle of the thighs or the shins towards one another. And as the knees start to move further and further away from the body, you might find it more suitable to keep the arms straight here, perhaps releasing forearms to props or to the floor. And then just experiment with the hip, whether it's forward of the thighs or slightly back of the knees. This can bring about perhaps a lot of sensation for your body. And as we start to move into these poses that access these denser areas, we might then start to observe those moments where we're kind of pushing away from that sensation. In which case I'd encourage you to ease off a bit and just let the body slowly and gradually find its suitable depth. Noticing the breath here. And observing that power of pause to observe if you're clenching within the jaw, within the belly, or somewhere within the legs. Just start to notice what types of thoughts are arising, and if nothing really is coming to mind, don't try to seek anything out, just being that quiet observer and noticing. You might stay more fairly present to the feeling that's within the body. And ultimately just simmering at this edge that falls between a 2 and a 5 on a scale from 0 to 10. We'll be here for less than a minute. Here, rising back up onto those hands and knees. And again, settling back into that simple child's pose. Knees fairly together. together, sink the hips to heels, just pausing here for a moment. Rising back up to hands and knees. Moved through a two-part dragon sequence. And dragons are essentially a knee down, low lunge in the Yin Yoga world, and they really start to access some deeper areas within the body. So we're going to start with stepping the right foot forward, just to the outside of the right hand. You might heel to the foot out wider, keep her closer into the body. You might turn the toes out a bit. And if you find that you're not feeling a lot of sensation on the top of that left thigh, you might explore sliding that leg back a bit in space. If there's any discomfort underneath the knee, just be sure to take that blanket, pat it, or roll your yoga mat a few times. And just pat underneath the knee or just behind the knee on the shin. You might enjoy just staying with hands on the floor or blocks, or lowering the forearms down onto the props or the floor, and just settle in here, letting the weight of the body descend down. So lots of different target areas here. Within that inner right groin, the hamstring, perhaps the outer hip of the right leg, maybe even more so across the top of that left thigh. And so if you do find yourself in those moments of pushing away doubt, anxiousness, I wouldn't deem it as necessarily something bad. It's just an open awareness and observation. How does this show up within my body? And if I pause and if I shift a bit, if I reframe what is exactly happening in this moment, can it bring about a little bit of ease? We'll be here for just a few more breaths. Yin Yoga really teaches us about how impermanent things are, so we won't be in this posture forever. Okay, so then we're going to move into a posture called Fragon, and it's like a mixture of dragon and frog. So our back left leg will be a bit like in frog pose, so we're going to shift the hips ever so slightly back, start to bring the left shin and dial it in, and then start to settle back in here. So this will get really deep into the adductors, so you might feel it along the outer line of the hip, more so within the inner line, and it's okay if that right knee is moving past the right ankle. This might be a little tricky one to start to settle into. I know I feel a bit awkward within this pose, but I always like when I come out of it much better. We'll be here for about 30 more seconds. And with the legs in this arrangement, do you notice some similarities in that back leg to the frog, or does it feel much different? gradually start to shift back towards that inside dragon. Shifting the hips back, swinging that left shin back in line with the hip or so, sinking the hips forward for just a moment to transition. And then from here, we'll gradually make our way to a downward facing dog. So tucking your left toes, lifting your back knee, and just being mindful of stepping that right foot back. Might feel nice to sway and walk your dog out a little bit here. If this feels like it's too much, you can always release to that simple child's or lower onto the belly. Just pause here for a moment. And then releasing back down to your hands and knees, and then we'll take this to the other side. And stepping your left foot forward, again, honoring how your body feels and paying attention to that as opposed to how I look and you trying to mirror your body to match mine. So we all have these different variations with our skeletal structure, and I'm sure you've heard me all say that before. We also have variations from side to side, and really that changes from day to day here too. So you can stay more upright, hands on blocks or the floor, just experiment here. You can always take a different arrangement than you typically do. See how that changes the sensation for you in this moment. About 30 more seconds here. And if you're lower down onto forearms, straightening through the arms, and we'll gradually start to shift towards that fragan. Hips shift slightly back so that you can kickstand that right shin inward. And then you'll, again, start to move the hips in that direction to the left. And just starting to access the inner right thigh. You might be kind of angled out away from the legs here. You might shift the hips slightly back in space. About 30 more seconds here. slowly start to return to your inside dragon. So shifting that right shin back behind you. Just pause here for a few breaths. And then with the hands about under the shoulders, tuck that right toe, lift the back knee. Mindfully step back to your down dog here. And so it might feel nice to sway those hips from side to side a few times. Just observing the sensation dissipating from those areas. Alright. Start to make your way onto your back. We'll begin to get into the outer hips a bit more. So as you release onto your back, just take a moment to pause. Let the knees fall in towards one another. Hands can just rest wherever it feels most comfortable. Then from here we'll come into a posture called Eye of the Needle. So crossing the right ankle over the left thigh, and then accessing sensation within the outer hip. This might be best felt by holding on to the left thigh, the shin, or closer towards the ankle. Depending on your range of motion, you might be just hugging the right shin in towards the body instead, and just letting the left leg hang heavy onto the floor. So this is a great posture to take anytime that we're accessing poses like shoelace or the swan, or anything where we're trying to access the outer hip. This tends to be pretty mild onto the knee joint. And if you're at a wall space too, you could take your left foot to a wall and drag the heel down the wall as you draw the right shin closer in towards the chest. Or you could rest your left foot onto a couple of stacked blocks or books here. If you find that the arms are getting kind of tired from holding on to the left leg. And just as we hold here, begin to observe how you might feel sensation change with the breath, or how it has shifted over time. A few more breaths here. Alright, and slowly start to release. Placing both of the feet onto the floor, and then again, just letting the knees fall towards one another. You might be kind of wondering When we move into these postures, it feels like the muscle is being stretched. And it is a bit, because our fascia is this amazing web-like structure that surrounds muscle fibers and helps to form the shape of the muscle itself. Okay, we'll take this to the other side. And so those fibers that are surrounding the muscle tissues, and then you can take this to an appropriate depth for you here. Perhaps drawing the right knee now in towards the chest, holding onto that leg, just noting how this side feels. Instead, you might just hold on to the left thigh. And if you're finding that there's any discomfort within the head here, because the chin is raised much higher, you could also support underneath the head here with your book or a pillow or something nearby. And so our fascia has this great amount of elasticity to it. And then as it starts to get closer to where the muscle inserts and is attached to the bone, those fibers just become stronger and denser to form the ligaments and the tendons. And so there is a bit of elasticity to those fibers, but not quite as much. And when we sustain injuries to the body, we start to lose ranges of motion because the scar tissue that gets built up is much, much more dense, kind of misaligned in terms of how the fibers are laid down, and that's to support and safeguard the structure. But once that area has healed, we would like that scar tissue to begin to break apart. And so when you do myofascial release or go to a massage therapist and get deep tissue massage, they're working out those different adhesions that form within our fascia. And so you can think of this practice as just being your own body worker. And it's believed that these different sheets and planes within the body can be this pathway for our chi, our energy, to move through our body. As we age, this fascia becomes a little bit drier as well. So you can think of these postures as wringing out action, like squeezing out a dried sponge, and then when we come out of the posture, fresh hydrous fluids and blood comes back into that area. Okay, so we'll slowly start to release this side. Just resting in that constructive rest, knees fall in towards one another. And then make your way back up to a seated position. And we'll start to work into the outer hips a bit more, coming into a posture called square. So square can look different for many of us. We're going to start with the right shin crossed in front of the left if you're not feeling much here. And you can start to explore stacking the shins. And if there's a big gap between the knees and the feet, notice if as you start to tilt forward, if that gap starts to get a little bit smaller, you can also fill that gap with props around you. And so from here, we'll just simply start to fold forward any amount. continue to start to incorporate that power of the pause, and perhaps reflecting upon how that could be used off of the mat. That moment to pause when we feel like we're going to lash out in anger. And that moment to pause when we're fearful and not sure where to go next. And as you fold forward, the spine can be more a neutral spine or rolled and kind of rounded forward, in which case you might start to feel some tension or resistance within the head or the neck. And just utilizing the weight of the head to increase and start to reduce tension within those spaces. About 30 more seconds here. Gradually lifting out of the fold, and bringing the hands back behind you, uncrossing the legs, and just sway the legs from side to side a few times. Okay, so we'll take this to the other side. The left shin will cross in front of the right, and see if you can bring the feet a little bit more forward. And the shin's about parallel to the top edge of your mat. And as you fold forward here, if you don't feel much sensation, you can continue to fold forward and hold and see if that starts to build, or explore that stacked variation. I've started to notice that when we're in a forward fold, perhaps you find this edge of sleepiness. And this can invoke that calming action to our nervous system. And oftentimes in our meditation practice or in our yoga practice, it might be frowned upon to be within this sleepy state, perhaps alluding that you're not quite present, but there can be a lot of value in observing the sleepiness. You might find yourself in kind of this dreamy, groggy-like state. But then again, it's that opportunity to just remind yourself, this is sleepiness, and this is how it feels. And just a few more breaths here. So gradually starting to lift up from this fold. Taking your time to uncross the legs, bringing the hands back behind you and swaying the legs from side to side. We're going to close with a little counter for the legs here. We did a lot of external rotation within our practice today. So we'll start to make our way down onto our blocks again. And then just to giving the legs some space here, start to sway the knees over towards the left. And so the right knee might be stacking on the left foot. There might be space between it. And if that right hip is lifting in space, that's okay too. You could even pick up your left foot and just prop it to the outside of the right thigh. And this nice internal rotation of the right leg. Just a few more breaths here. Gradually sway the legs up through center and over to the right side. You might shift the hips a little bit to the left. in a minute here. Just inviting these moments of quietude within the posture to really be that meditative state for you. Feeling it how you feel serves you best in this moment. Okay, bringing those legs back up through center. And just hugging them in towards the chest for a moment. A little rock from side to side. And I'll take one last pose. It'll be a bit more restorative in nature and will serve to open across the front of the chest. So grabbing a rolled up blanket, coming up to a seated position. And we'll just create a jelly roll with your towel or your blanket to support the length of the spine. Releasing down. Just opening the arms out, nice and wide. Palms might be up or down. Nice counter stretch for those forward folds that we were doing. This open-heartedness, a stretch across the front of the chest. And then just gradually starting to roll off of this pillow, moving it off to the side and coming to rest in your Shavasana. start to take a few deep breaths, recirculating this energy through the power of the breath, and then just starting to wiggle slowly into the body. Wiggle fingers, toes, circle ankles, wrists. And bringing knees into the chest. Rolling over to one side, just pausing for a moment. One last pause before we resume out into the rest of our day. With eyes closed or a soft gaze, press the eyes back up. And bringing the hands to heart. And in this prayer position, we have an opportunity to have a gesture of gratitude. So bowing chin to chest, and bowing to what you are grateful for in this moment, within this practice. I'm so very grateful for you practicing along with me. From my heart to yours, namaste. Thank you so much. My hope is that you're able to start to incorporate this pause as you start to move through the rest of your day.